Hey. Welcome to episode number 122 of the Titanforge podcast. I'm Dratnos, joined by Tettles and Trell, and our special guest this week is Automatic
Trell 2.
Jack.
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Welcome back to the show. Great to have you here. Excited to get the chance to talk to you again. And this week we have a pretty cool topic as well, one that hopefully your knowledge should complement ours on quite well, which is we want to talk about the 9.2 Mythic Plus metagame, what kind of specs are going to do well, how they'll work, and of course, as the only healer present, you will offer a wealth of insight there, surely not biased at all towards such specs as Holy Priest or Mistweaver Monk.
Well, originally it would have been biased, but then they nerfed Resto Druid, so now it's just correct.
Yeah, that's true. The Resto Druid nerf, the Resto Shaman nerf as well, that like the revert of the buff on the conduit. I think they're still going to be rather strong though, but we'll see. All of that though, that's going to be our main topic. Before we get there, we have a bunch of smaller news items to cover. The first one being cross-faction. The announcement of cross-faction to not 9.2, but 9.2.5 is the plan for this. So here's the executive summary. Guilds will remain single faction. Random events like looking for dungeon, that kind of stuff, also single faction. Raids, dungeons, and rated PvP will be cross-faction, except for Battle of Dazar'alor, Icecrown Citadel, and Trial of the Crusader, which, of course, extremely restrictive set of 3 raids there, and a couple other dungeons they said as well. So, look out. How are they going to handle Siege of Borealis, right? With the 2 different Siege of Borealises? I don't know. It's a mystery.
Yeah, I promise you don't want to go back in that dungeon.
I just want to do the Alliance side. I want to see what the Alliance thing is all about in there.
You basically just skip all the Alliance stuff and go the Horde route anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Then don't you get like a minute of RP at the end as well?
Oh yes, 30 seconds of forced RP after the third boss.
Yeah,
Yes.
I forgot about that actually.
How about that Tazvesh dungeon? Huh? It's going to be really fun.
30 seconds of forced RP on every boss.
Every boss, yeah. I mean, they fixed that. That'd be nice.
Okay,
Yeah.
something completely off topic, derailing this.
Sorry.
Can they next expansion not give us like so many gauntlets and so many just times where you'll just wait 30 seconds for RP? There's no need for it. It's just not fun.
I feel like it would be cool if those could be in the M0 and then not in the M+.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
I think that would be
I agree with that, yeah.
a neat little
Like, just-
compromise.
I mean, like a minute and a half of running just from like a boss and the other side to the next pack is just way too much. There's at least an option to just like put in a little teleport in Mythic Plus only,
Or
I
it's
feel
like a
like-
speed boost.
Yeah, I feel like every dungeon has it even with, it's like Necrotic Wake, you got flown up to the Necropolis, right? You got poured up to the top. Spires, you've got the airways 5 times in that dungeon. Theater, you're just waiting for that portal after the first boss and back to the last boss. I agree. I think it's something they should use more sparingly.
It's definitely the most minor inconvenience of all time, but like I would prefer like if the dungeons were just like designed a little bit more open with easier trash pulls. I think this complaint is almost moot. But like if we're just talking about things that maybe they should look at for next expansion, that would probably be on the list.
How do you guys think this cross-realm or cross-faction gameplay is going to affect things?
I think it's only a net benefit. I don't think it's going to be a serious quality of life upgrade right away. Like in my mind, in my situation, I would still be Horde in my guild, for progression. And then after a couple months or a couple weeks, when most people I play with in Mythic Plus outside of that are all done with their progression, then you can start moving your tunes to Alliance or whatever and using the ratios that you want while still playing with your friends. But that would be like late in the patch every time for me, at least.
Yeah, until it gets opened up to guilds, which I think some people are speculating that they don't want to just blast that out with 9.2.5, that they would rather look and wait. I think that may have even been mentioned in an Ian article.
Yeah.
Once guilds have the ability to have people that are on mixed factions, I think that really opens it up for a lot of unique opportunities. Until then, I do also view this as just basically a net positive, and it's very good for the Alliance player bases, at least on NA, and on EU, where it's so heavily horde lopsided.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of like a good segue for the next expansion in a couple ways, because it's going to happen at 9.2.5 when the game will really need like a shot in the arm to kind of get people a little bit back into the mix and everything. Like you said, Trell, it's going to be after a lot of hardcore players are done with their progress, so they'll be able to just kind of switch around as they want to. But I think the other thing is it'll make it a lot easier for like Alliance players to kind of find guilds for the next expansion, because otherwise you have to
That's true.
Go out and invest whatever 10, 15 bucks it is. Go see if you like that guild at all, and then try to come back, right? So,
well, I think that's a good point. That like opens up all the Alliance players to many opportunities to meet players from the Horde that they wouldn't normally ever get. Like they'll just a lot of times you meet someone in this game, and then you can actually make good connections that way for purposes that you didn't even intend to. Like eventually ending up in the same guild as them, even though you're only meeting them for Mythic Plus in the first place.
Yeah. I hope that it also is like a bit of like dev time concern where they say, hey, we could get this out faster, but any sort of like cross-faction guild stuff will take more time, or like maybe hard copium. My dream is they make it like guild halls will be part of 10.0.
Oh,
and cross-faction so cool. Guilds as well. Like that's what I want, like that neutral meeting ground for everyone to hang out in. That's
that'd be really cool.
So like what do you think they're gonna do with Hall of Fame?
Just make it like 200 or 250 guilds, period.
If they made it cross-faction, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because right now, for a guilds to get a guild achievement, you have to like not have transferred within the last month, and you also have to have 16 of your 20 in the same guild. So, theoretically, if you needed to, you could have a couple people play Alliance in a guild, or I think what would be more likely is if top guilds decide Alliance is better on whole in 10.0, right, and they switch, but you still want your Shaman to have Goblin Jump, you could have your Shaman playing Goblin, right, and still have them in the raid. So it opens up a possibility there, because the thing that like really stops the really top-end guilds from playing Alliance, and they almost still went Alliance against this, was just the fact you'd lose your whole network of like supporting players, M+ helpers, PvP friends, a lot of the people who would trade gear to you in Heroic and stuff. But that's all fixed now, right? Liquid Echo could both go Alliance and still get all of the help they get from outside the raid from Horde players in 10.0, yeah. So I could see those guilds going Alliance if the Alliance continues to have the slightly better racials, which for the most part it does. I think Goblin Jump is the main appealing thing about the Horde racials.
For Alliance, it's like Nelf, Mechagon or Mechanome, Damage, and Dwarf. Like those are so Dwarf and
yeah, Dwarf racials is strong. I think probably the strongest
one.
like rating effect of them, but it's also just like the damage number. Like if you look at most classes racial sims, it's usually a blue bar at the top, not by a huge amount, but you know, take what you can get, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Dwarf helps a lot for tanks.
Yeah, Mechanome supremacy, baby.
Oh my god.
Do we see in the MDI? They play it.
So is there actually no restrictions on resources? Like if the main guild was Alliance, could they actually get pots and stuff from the Horde community somehow?
Well, Auction House is cross-faction now. Yeah, that was quietly changed several years ago.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
okay,
so you can just use the Auction House on your server. Worst case, you could, buy a bunch of stuff from another realm, from another faction, and transfer it over. So it would be expensive, but doable if you really needed stuff.
I wonder if they just let you trade with people. I don't know if that was something that they answered or not, if you'd be able to actually trade with the other faction at all.
And like, how is Sage Chat
there you go.
So like weak auras?
Yeah, you're going to be allowed to trade loot.
Oh,
now you can trade loot with people who are in other servers as you, right? Because it's got that like blue tag. But you can't just trade like herbs, right? Potions. So I suspect it would work that way based on this wording, but yeah, we really have yet to see.
This is why I'm so excited about like when they're releasing it though, because there are going to be these little like weird sort of instances that'll be annoying, and then by the time 10.0 comes around, hopefully they can get a lot of this stuff solved.
Yeah, I do hope they eventually just go with cross-faction guilds as well, and because right now like the play pattern Trell was talking about of like Horde for progression, Alliance for farm, that costs you $30 per tier to maintain that, right? So obviously Blizzard would like that, but I suspect what would happen is is people just will not make use of that in the same way that like if a one-time swap to Alliance and you still got to do all the same stuff, I think more people would. But I still think a lot of this is going to be good for a lot of folks.
Oh, absolutely. It'll definitely just be an instant benefit for everybody
Mm-hmm.
that's not a non-raider. That'll be super nice.
My guess is that by 11.0 we'll have cross-faction guilds. That's my prediction. So
Oh no!
see how it works out.
Come on, 10-0, please.
11.0?
Yeah.
The year 2027.
Dude, they don't want to look like they're moving too quick on this. They don't want to smash the sanctity of the factions.
Please smash.
Smash that like button.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. 1 like equals 1 cross-faction game. We also have some news on tier sets, tier rules.
Boosting. We forgot about boosting.
Oh
too.
yeah, okay. Let's talk about boosting first. They nuked the boosting communities. They said boosting communities are banned, right? You can't do those anymore. You can't, like, they want to, especially the cross faction ones, right? And the main idea is to just, I think, to remove them from trade chat.
Oh god.
Yeah, Hokon Nova,
That was
Oblivion.
not good.
Yeah. It's funny as well because I think the boosting communities could have gotten away with it if they could have just found a way to not do that to trade chat.
Yeah.
But they did, and now they're gone, and trade chat is free once again for all of the important discourse that goes on there.
Did somebody say Thunder Fury Blessed Blade of the Windseeker?
Honestly, I don't even think it'll be free of sales. Like, people will just advertise their own groups again, like they did in Legion.
The trade chat will be like a couple of those posts people will be posting at a time, but before it was like 20 advertisers from 3 different communities all posting every 30 seconds, right? And it's just completely impossible.
All from the same community too sometimes.
Yeah. Like 8 different Hokon, 8 different Galley, whatever.
Yeah. Well, dude, back in the Gallywix days, there was just the one community, and it was much more under control.
Most trusted name in boosting.
Yeah, and then there were RMT going on in there, and I remember the day they nuked Gallywix.
Yeah,
it's really funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's the
really
problem.
funny.
Is that like they talk about, oh yeah, we need to have these fees for boosting communities to pay for all the transfers of the gold and move it all around, but then they just end up sitting on mountains and mountains of gold. That they bought everything in the game, they maxed out BMAW on any server they want, anytime they want. So all people find as an end game is just to RMT it away and then quit.
Yeah, I mean, when you're sitting on millions of gold, right, hundreds of millions of gold, right, and you can actually like pay off loans or something. It's I can see how people who wouldn't have started from an RMT point see the appeal from there.
You guys remember those MOP websites?
$10,000. Yeah, fuck it.
You guys remember those MOP websites for challenge mode boosting that were like super professional looking and everything like that before Blizzard
BlazingBoost.com?
There are other ones too. Yeah. Like, it was ridiculous. There's some streamers back in the day who like that was way more income than most people would ever earn streaming.
It's untold, but I know people who paid off like their college loans with boosting and MOP and shit. Like
before, like Legion, you could get away with it more. You could get away with it much more overtly. Nowadays, any RMT that's going on, like, first off, is much more likely to get banned, and second off, you have to be really, sneaky stealth mode about it. Whereas before, they didn't really enforce that hard. Anything that wasn't super blatant, or the like account hacking side of the RMT.
Yeah.
Which that was one thing.
They declared that stuff on their taxes.
Oh my god! Tells the accountant. The IRS is hiring a lot this year, and I'm sure they're going to be coming after a lot of people. Okay, do your taxes, guys. Do them correct.
Oh man, I still have to do those. How long do I have? 2 months?
Yeah, we got a lot of time.
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah, that sounds like a job for
Can
me.
you be my
2
CPA
months.
for this?
Absolutely not.
Okay, good. That probably
I have to
wasn't a
hire
wise
my
choice.
own CPA, man.
I just TurboTax it now. I hired an accountant 1 year, and then after that, I just did it.
I gotta call you because you're
probably a good idea.
really smarter than me.
Yeah, you guys can talk to me about that stuff. It's they have like a really weird designation for like gamer or something to describe your
our
self-employed
income.
job. Yeah.
I assume that just it shows up at somebody in front of the IRS and they just look at it, they just roll their eyes.
It's like, oh, not one of these content creator things.
That's right.
Oh yeah, this person gets $37 a month from YouTube, $20 a month from Twitch.
Stop
Wow, they're
attacking
owning.
me. Stop attacking my YouTube.
Hold on,
$100 of MDI winnings.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been personally attacked here as well. Hold on.
Oh, a sponsorship for $100 a month. Let's go.
Yo, damn me, that sponsor.
$12 that appeared in his PayPal on a random Thursday.
Did he do an Ataldazar with somebody that day that was pretty bad? Oh my goodness.
Well, listing like computer equipment and video games as business expenses.
True.
Yeah. Technically you could do, but it has to be the percentage of the time that you use it for business.
24 hours a day.
Just saying. Yeah.
All business all the time.
All business all the time. That's right.
Party in the back.
You got your suit.
You buy a faster
All right,
computer.
we got to move on. We're going to be here forever if we don't go forward.
All right.
The lifestyle podcast. Displates. Yeah, displates.
Which plate?
The posters behind me.
Which plate?
Displate.
That's where you go. Displate. You see?
All
right,
I don't have a sponsor with them.
So dumb.
We have Displate. If you're looking for a podcast, get in touch. We have a FAQ here on tier set acquisition. So this came out recently. It is 4 groupings of classes for the tokens. So not Vanquisher, Conqueror, Protector like it was last time around. We have Mystic for Druid, Hunter, Mage. Venerated for Paladin, Priest, Shaman. This is going to be the tier token that you don't need very much of. Zenith for Monk, Rogue, Warrior. And Dreadful for Demon Hunter, Death Knight, and Warlock. So they're thematic now.
They really should have put Dreadful on the Monk token. Is Mistweaver? Okay.
Wait, what?
Can you explain that to
they
us?
describe them, their themes to them. You know, like Pally, Priest, and Shaman are venerated because they're the 3 healers you bring to every single raid. And I said they should have brought Dreadful.
But they don't
to
get
Monk,
gear.
But
Yeah.
okay. Kids.
Sorry, I don't get healer jokes.
That's what this show's about.
Much like healers getting tier pieces.
True.
But of course, healers will get tier pieces because Blizzard has cruelly decided that we won't be able to steal all of the tier tokens that drop for healers. So you need to have a soulbound tier piece of higher or equivalent item level to be able to trade the pieces or the tokens. I don't see the piece like this is this is the weirdest part to me that I spent like 10 minutes trying to figure out because I thought they only dropped as tokens, but here it says trade tier pieces or trade tokens. So under some circumstances they drop as pieces versus other times as tokens. What's going on here? I don't know.
You're in a raid
melts my
group and
brain.
you go creation catalyst, and then you trade the drop from the catalyst.
Right? Yeah. Like hopefully that doesn't work. That would be
Honey, it's
quite
time
weird.
for you to get me my 4-piece. Yes, dear.
My guess is
the
this is
healer.
just like they only drop as tokens, and this is just a weird sentence. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's gotta be, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Dude, the Great Vault stuff. We can move on to that. Dude, the Great Vault stuff looks very interesting.
It's
So-
weird.
Do you it's assumed that it's like a flat 6% per slot?
Well,
They have upgrade paths for the tier sets that you get from the vaults.
yeah. So you can, if you use
Yeah.
the catalyst on a piece, it will still have that upgrade ability. So if you didn't upgrade it all the way to max eye level, you still can, if it was a piece that had an upgrade path. But it turns into like the secondaries of the tier and everything, and it stays the exact same item level, so you can get tier at all kinds of item levels next tier. So we have this data done by Squishy, friend of the podcast, who had a Brewmaster Monk on PTR with 1 box on his M plus row, and he copied that character 200 times and opened all the Great Vaults.
What?
Dude,
That is so
I
much
was-
work.
I was online whenever he was doing it, just testing out some Moonkin stuff last night, and he kept going online and offline, and I was like, I DM'd him after I was done streaming. I was like, are you good? Why do you keep coming online and offline? What's happening? He goes, oh, don't worry about it. I'm writing an article. I was like, okay.
So this is 1 plus 15 spot in his Great Vault, and he got 188 non-tier pieces, 2 helms, 2 shoulders, 3 chests, 3 gloves, and 2 pants. He also got a socket and a tertiary on one of each of those tier, or on one, total of 1. So that adds up to a 6% drop chance for the tier there, which obviously is, when you have a small percentage, you need a very large sample size to be confident that you're actually all that close to it. So we can pretty confidently rule out that, the actual chance that he was opening wasn't 25 or something, but we can't really all that accurately rule out 3 or anything like that. So it could be in a range around those low numbers for this slot. Also worth caveating here, could be different on the different rows. There could be all kinds of different rules about this, right? This isn't necessarily the chance for any slot to have a tier piece in the Great Vault, but 1 M+ spot being 6% is the current hypothesis based off of this.
He also added some math down at the bottom on based off like what it would be if it was so that's off the static 6% for all of the slots, which there's also like another one. It's added to the pool chance that he has like right below there, and that may be a little bit more beneficial. It just kind of depends on which math section.
Right. So the added to the pool theory. This I sent him this theory actually, which is that so there are 91 possible M+ drops for Brewmaster. There are 5 possible tier pieces, right? So 5 out of 96 is 5.2%, which is well within the 6%, observation
Margin.
we saw. So what could be happening is it's just randomly picking an item from those 96 and showing it to him in that slot in the Great Vault, right? Which means if that were the case, you'd have much higher than 6% in the raid and PvP slots because there's less than 91 non-tier pieces in those slots. The ratio would be much better. So it would, first of all, it would mean a loot system that screwed over M+ players, which is why some people think this is unrealistic, and I think it's very realistic to think this is what's going on here.
Yep.
But yes,
hold on.
So this would mean like if you opened 3 M+ vaults, you'd have about a 15% shot of seeing a tier in one of them. But if you opened 3 raid slots, you'd have a full third of a chance, and 3 PvP slots basically the same as well. And then if you got all of them, you'd have 61% chance of seeing a tier piece in your vault. So all different plausible hypotheses for how this could work.
So the math on this runs out to be about if your whole entire guild is doing 9 vaults every week, your whole entire guild will have their 4 set by the 4th week of the raid being open, 3rd week of Mythic.
You're counting the loot from the other sources, like the tier from the other sources.
Yeah,
as
but
well?
it's also assuming that you're like full clearing the raid every week that you can. Most people will have it the second week of Mythic.
You got to remember on Heroic Week, you're not going to be able to get a 3 raid vault, right? You're only going to be able to get a 2 raid vault.
That was also assumed.
Yeah.
So I think for most people, it's probably gonna be like the 4th to 5th week that the raid is open.
Yeah, a big thing as well is going to be like, does your guild clear Heroic first or Normal first as well? Because if you clear Heroic first, you can trade Normal tier, but if you clear Normal first, you can't trade Heroic tier. So you'll get more tier across your raid if you can clear Heroic first rather than Normal. It's always true that that's the better way to do it for trading gear, but it's especially true this way around. So definitely.
So does that mean that if you loot Heroic pants and then you loot Normal helm, you could trade the Normal helm?
No, it needs to be in that slot.
It's just the same slot. Okay.
I assume, at least. I guess it doesn't say in that slot, so
A tier piece of equivalent or higher item level. Okay, it has to be.
I assume it's You're right though, Charlie.
The way I read that, it's kind of ambivalent. So I don't know exactly. Sure.
I wouldn't read too much into that.
It would be so weird if you got 1 Heroic tier piece and then you could just keep trading away your 2 set on Normal. But I mean, I guess it's not impossible. I doubt it though. I think that this is just I mean, this sentence is already so weird because it says trade tier pieces and trade tokens. I assume this sentence was just written by an intern, and we'll leave it at that.
Please do not flame the long-term developers of the game, calling them interns.
Oh my goodness. This honestly kind of feels like shards again.
Do you guys remember the comma as well? There was that comma in BFA where I just, for like a month, I had like this tinfoil theory about whether keys were going down by 4 levels or 5. Because there was a comma about like whether they were going down by how much they normally do and 1 level or not. Anyways, sorry, I cut you off there, Jack.
What were you gonna say, Jack?
Yeah.
It just feels like Shards of Domination again with this set bonus upgrade and everything, where it's just gonna be such a mess of like all the world first guilds doing ridiculous things to be able to get their setups, but also for a lot of guilds who aren't doing as many splits. You know, it's just going to be such a luck of the draw of like, well, Jimmy here's got the tier set, so we're going to bring him in on this fight versus this other guy.
Well, I mean, like, what did people expect? Like seriously,
honestly, I was expecting
the downside tier sets.
I was expecting them to accelerate the drop rates and use the Race to World First as like a promotion event, basically, for like double legendaries and tier sets to show all the crazy cool things that could be done with all like the freedoms. Because this is supposed to be the patch of like freedom, right? Where we're gonna defeat the jailer, we're gonna unite the Shadowlands, we're gonna complete all this stuff. Let's show the best players in the world at the biggest time that World of Warcraft has the most audience, and say, hey, let's watch, this guy, the best in the world, play with these different setups. And wow, he played with 4 different covenants throughout all of progression and did all these crazy things and used 7 different legendaries, whatever, right? But then we're gonna run a lot of similar builds to what we ran in Sanctum all over again for those guys.
I don't disagree with your sentiment whenever you're factoring in legendaries, because I view legendaries as a system, but I view tier as something different. I view tier as like a gear. It's like gear, and generally I view gear as something that you should grind for. I mean, that's just like kind of the point of what WoW has always been. It's just like gear is to be grinded for. Whereas I think the system should be given. Like the double legendary, I don't think that there's a reason that it shouldn't be on expansion launch. At least with tier, it does make sense for you to have to do a little bit more, and it's a little bit slower to acquire, in my mind at least.
I don't know. I think this is all pretty expected for me as well. Like both parts, just like power unlocks over. Like they don't want to give you all the power on the second week of the patch and then have it be an 8-month patch where you have hit that power on the second week and you're flat the rest of the time. So they want there to be that, over the first month or two of the patch, you're powering up. I definitely was a bit surprised by the kind of the feel. It felt like a lot of people assumed they were going to be fully tradable as well. Like they weren't going to have trade restrictions on them. And, or then like it was an affront when it was suggested they might. And now that it's come out that they do, which is, I mean, I
think part of that was like the additional drops and that they were physical items. So you were able to have an equivalent or higher level glove slot, but you could trade that tier glove to somebody else, right? I think that's where a lot of that came from. But then it's like, okay, there's not as many drops, and they're also tokens. So,
at least for me, it seems like a lot of people are arguing for Master Loot to be brought back, but they're arguing it in like a really roundabout way.
Right? It's like the short-term outrage about this announcement, which basically just boils down to, we want Master Looter, right? Which is not a new thing, right? Like that is the same drum that has existed for
I don't disagree
years.
with that. Yeah.
For my perspective is, I think this part is an unforced error by Blizzard, because if they just made it so you could trade tier if you had tier, I think this would work pretty well. But the fact that they've got this higher item level requirement, it's going to introduce this problem that personal loot can have when they make a dumb mistake like this, which is I get a 50 DPS upgrade and I can't trade an 1,000 DPS upgrade. If they just made it so that you could trade if you had tier, then that wouldn't really be a problem. And I think that personal loot, some people think if I have a 400 DPS upgrade, but it's a 500 DPS upgrade for somebody else, right? They want to be able to have a guild where you trade those things. But I understand why Blizzard doesn't want that to be the case, right? They don't want people to trade 400 DPS upgrades away, right? And feel bad about it, right? Because a lot of people do feel bad about that. I wouldn't, my guild wouldn't, but a lot of people playing this game would not enjoy being in that environment, especially when you get to a point where, the guild leader would force you to do it in the other direction because they're wrong or misguided or because they want the gear or all that other kind of stuff. But here, the fact that, I could drop heroic gloves when I already have normal gloves and not be able to trade them to somebody who needs it for their 4-set is going to make personal loot unnecessarily feel much worse than it could. So I think this is just a huge error that is being made about how tier trading is going to work. But if they just didn't do that, I think it'd be fine.
Yeah, I feel like agreed. The sentiment is also kind of similar to like power infusion and other sort of like simp buffs, though, is like we're free to give away those power increases in our gameplay, but then we're not free to give away power increases in our gearing.
Oh, I'm against PI as well.
Yeah, I know.
I'm consistent on this one.
I agree with your analysis of like what they're probably thinking. I'm just like, we see those situations and it's just like, but PI and like, setting this up where we boost up other people. You see crazy logs of like 70, 80 external buffs on people. Like, come on.
I definitely do view them as different, but
yeah.
so like I do understand, but at the same time, I feel like some people did not know what they were really getting into whenever they were asking for tier sets back. And for me, I think this is kind of cool. I actually really like tier sets, and I think that bringing them back is going to ultimately be pretty good for the game. And by the way, I want to make this explicitly clear because I don't think that Blizzard has done a good job of it. It's not raid tier sets. They are class tier sets that are coming from all forms of content. They are not just from raid anymore.
Yeah,
that's the really good part. We like that.
Yeah, of course, we have the Catalyst that's going to open up as well in... God, when is it?
We don't have an article for it.
8 weeks? Yeah, 8 weeks into the patch, the Creation Catalyst is going to open up too and let you just create tier 2. So, and it's 1 per week at the start, but that's going to accelerate faster after that. So, I mean, realistically, like, yeah, by the 10th week of the patch, you can have a 4 set, even if you just are a Zereth Mortis gamer, basically. So... a very big change to how tier used to work, right? It used to be with tier, you just always had to go to raid, but now there's at least this light down the tunnel for you that you're gonna get tier.
And you can target specific bosses. Yeah. Unlike the Shards of Domination where you had to do all of the bosses and then specific bosses for the pieces.
That is very nice. I 100% admit.
I think the current way to do it with the Catalyst system, at least, is to like keep your eye out for a piece that would fit in the tier slot that you want, but it has like a tertiary set or a socket, because I think that carries across, right? It doesn't matter what stats it has, but if it has something extra on it, those things do carry across when you convert it.
Item level as well, like Mythic Last 3. I think you can probably use that to get higher item level than the tier would normally drop at if you use those. So those are going to be...
true. Yeah. All those drops are like, oh yeah, is this an upgrade? He's like, no, I'm just gonna turn it into like a tier piece.
Yeah. Ask me again in 6 weeks.
Yeah, everyone's gonna mob the avoidance drop.
Oh yeah.
Or the leech drop.
Yeah, the healer's gonna have the leech drops. I want the avoidance.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll fight the healers for the leech drops. Leech is so good for tanks.
Yeah, Brew's looking kind of nutty.
Brew is, yeah. Absolutely.
Shh, don't say that.
All right, we also have class and tier set changes that have come with this recent build. So a couple of minor ones here. Holy Paladin nerfed the set bonus, buffed to the base healing of their spells by 6%. Shadow Priest into the dirt, taken out back.
Oh my god. They got nerfed.
Yeah.
Their base class got nerfed too. We have 2 things of nerfs. We have tier and then base change. They got double nerfed.
Yep.
Yeah, they were almost going to be playable next year, but Blizzard has heroically intervened and stopped that from potentially happening. The rumor has it that the PlayStation executives all play Shadow Priest, and so Microsoft now, taking some shots there.
Shout out Sony.
We have, then other than that, Windwalker nerf to Bone Dust Brew. It says buffed here, but they buffed the number, but they made it so it can't crit. So actually pretty big nerf to that. The Kyrian Druid one is a big one as well here. That's going to be a huge one for Moonkins. This was their top DPS thing, but also for Resto, for Guardian. That Kyrian game plan is no longer on the table, which I will not mourn because it was dumb.
That was a big viability nerf though for Guardian and Resto, especially because that's like a major selling point to be able to buff a DPS on bringing them to the raid or the dungeon.
Yeah, the second this came out, I basically had stopped logging into my Druid at all. This was the reason that I was potentially getting a Druid ready for next year.
I mean, Moonkin was getting way too much damage out of it, and then obviously the other specs just got caught in the crossfire where it's just like, oh, that Covenant is a lot of damage from Moonkin. Oh shit, Resto and Guardian, beware.
Yeah, so interesting set of changes there. Does do a little bit of a shakeup here at the last minute. Probably the last big PTR shakeup, or maybe one more before we get the patch out. Because of course the patch has got to be soon, right? There's got to be an announcement. It's probably happening right now. We're just missing it because we're doing this podcast or something, right? That announcement Must
No,
be
if the
imminent.
announcement went up, we would stop the show and say, please.
Okay, well, I just
Dranos
checked.
would bounce and make a video.
Yeah, that's true. Peace. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be
Time
back
to make my
next week.
video. Gotta be titles to it.
True. I got you. No, I would just have internet issues. You guys would keep doing the podcast. I'd upload my video, beat
Yep.
Tettles and Jack to it.
Yeah, I tried with the encrypted. He smoked me.
Yeah. Okay. What else do we have? I think that's it for the 9.2 news. I think we're sorted on that. So we will talk about the 9.2 metagame and stuff, which of course will be based on some of these class changes as well. But first, it's our tip of the week. My tip of the week is this cool site. I actually used it as a tip of the week a couple weeks ago, but it's been a couple months ago. It's been updated since then. It's a pretty cool site. It's called lorgs.io, lorgs.io. And it's a tool that looks at the top logs for certain specs and lets you visualize relevant spells on an encounter timeline. So you can figure out, like, hey, when are arcane mages using their arcane power on Sylvanas, right? And you can see that, and you can be like, oh, these look a little bit different. You can also filter by things like kill time, right? So if you're like, okay, what if we just want to look at the ones that are pushing early on the boss, right? You could look at the kill time and, oh, all of a sudden, all these are looking very similar now, where they're using their different abilities. And you can use this sort of thing to figure out what to do with those. You can look for potions and see where they're using second and third potions on fights. It's a pretty useful little effect. One pretty cool feature, actually, is healer comp cooldown as well. Say you want to be like, okay, we got one Mistweaver, one Holy Paladin, and two Disc Priests, right? And we want to figure out on Sylvanas where they're using it, where they're using their different effects. You can actually see, okay, maybe nobody
runs that comp.
Yeah, that's a bit of a weird comp. All right,
Zero
let's say
results.
one of those, two of those, and one Resto Shaman or something, right? On Sylvanas, that's got to be a pretty common comp. Yeah, okay, we got one of them.
I've noticed that
Disc
this
is
might
great.
just be a log issue. Not really sure what it is, because I tried to do this on Warcraft logs. It would only show like a handful of different logs that would pop up. So I'm not sure why this is, but I've seen it before.
Yeah, maybe it's having some trouble finding enough like of a source, but still, a very cool, in theory, to be able to look and see not just like when are Disc Priests using their cooldowns here, but like when are Disc Priests in this healer comp, right? Like where's the better spot for the Healing Tide Totem versus the whatever dumb disc ability you have, and all that kind of stuff.
That one.
Yeah.
So, question: can you input custom logs? Can you input multiple custom logs? Because I saw something at the beginning where it's
There's a load log
log.
button. You can put a URL for Warcraft logs there.
Imaginary patrons.
Legendary patrons can
interested
load
if you
multiple
can do-
pools and players at once as well.
Okay, so that's useful. I actually feel like that's really good, especially for progression, because also at some points there are like, if you're looking at the top 100 arcane mages who are doing that boss, some of them are doing some really cringe shit, and you may not get like a representative like outlook as to like what they're doing. But like if you pull up multiple players from multiple like well-known guilds, and if they're all kind of doing similar stuff, then you have something that's more reputable.
Yes, you can pick like a player and a pull from a log night, and
He died on pull.
Oh, probably. Yeah, you can see. Yeah, you can see some stuff about what's going on there.
That's really interesting. That's a really, really good tool in theory. I hope that works out.
I think for finding out one person's casts, just the default looking at the log itself and looking at the cast page is probably going to be better for this, but definitely a nice little extra bit of functionality on this site. So yeah, that's lorgs.io, lorgs.io, for anybody looking to make use of that. Of course, anytime you're using any sort of log analysis, just do some sanity checks on whatever conclusions you're reaching, because all of these different forms of tools have ways they can lie to you. All right, Trell, what have you got for us this week?
All right, so today I remembered something ancient about the game, so I looked it up and found the blue post from like 2007. And this is still active in the game, and a lot of people don't know this, but there's a different threat threshold of when you can overtake threat from a tank or whoever has it at the time, for if you're in melee range and if you're out of melee range, which we don't know exactly what that means, but I think it's like if you can auto attack, like swing at the boss, probably.
It sounds like a mage tip. Sorry.
Yeah, it is. It is an arcane mage tip, actually. They're always in melee. But if you're outside of melee range, it'll take up to 130% of the tank's threat to overtake him in threat. If you're in melee range, it only takes 110. That's why melee players are especially vulnerable to this usually. But at this season, and sometimes in random situations, some range players like to be in melee, so it could be really useful.
Yeah, the melee threat multiplier is a very important thing. That's why often you'll see, like, if the tank starts kiting, and then the mobs like run past the mage, they'll just turn and slap him. Although that can also be fervent strikes in this beautiful timeline.
It's normally fervent strikes.
Yeah.
Love me fervent strikes.
Yeah, so nice little piece of internet time machine stuff here. Of course, note that this article may not be fully updated as of patch 2.0.5. So this is before the Black Temple came out. This is not up to date based on the current classic patch.
Didn't Black Temple come out recently?
Yeah, it did just a couple weeks ago.
But yeah, that mechanic is still in the game as far as I know.
Yeah, definitely is.
So, it's wild.
I've seen it happen firsthand.
Yeah, especially, dude, mages have stuff where they need to go in melee, right? It's like, oh, I gotta go shifting power or whatever, and they're just like, blink in.
Yep.
Bonk.
They need to, like, alter time, blink in, get bonked, alter out, and then I don't have to heal them.
Dude, I've been playing some mage on PTR, and the worst is when you press alter time, and it was at like 60% health, and you get healed a little bit, and you're like,
well.
And then you don't have a cancel.
I'm just gonna go back down to 60
and you're just
now.
like, that's not gonna happen.
2 or 3 weeks ago, we were on Sylvanas in phase 2, running around the chains. Our mage hit alter time. One, he was at 40%. I serenitied him. I topped him off, and then he went back down to 40%, and then got the dot and everything like that from the soul judge. And I was so upset.
Did you just heal him, or did you fail him?
Of course, I healed him, but afterwards, I just started flaming him.
Dude, what do you mean? You got literal extra 60% of a health bar into your healing parse for that pull.
Sylvanas
That's
healing parses.
yeah.
Healing parses in general.
Healing parses in general. True. I'm like running frost sets and everything like that on my healers. I've given up.
All right, Jack. It's optional. Guests can have a tip of the week if they want, but if not, we can move further to Tettles's.
You can also steal this one at the top that we've had.
Oh yeah, we do have one at the top that's just available. We were gonna save it till the week of this affix, but you can also just fire it off now if you want.
I won't steal.
You can if you want. Okay.
I think my tip is very priest focused. It's one that not enough priests know about. It's fade. So fade, of course, is gonna like drop your threat, drop your aggro, and whatever. But it also is like a personal mind soothe for you. So with mind soothe, it reduces the range at which mobs will aggro you. But if you use it, but you can't use it on like undead mobs, for example. You can't use it on like demons. So being able to fade for yourself can kind of get you around some skips in like the other side. It can work as well for like Necrotic Wake, where after you pull the second, actually it's like the third big Goliath pull right before you fight second boss, right? There's the crackdown pillar. Usually you'll like shroud, get up to the boss, fight the boss, etc. But you can mind soothe and fade and get even closer to the mobs. So that way you don't have to worry about using an Invis pot, and you can just like run around all these undead mobs and not get aggro on them.
So is it like a full-on mind soothe level of radius? That's crazy.
I think
it's very powerful.
I think it's very similar. You can be in melee range of mobs and not get aggro on them if you mind soothe and fade them.
Now, I'm not seeing anything about this threat multiplier on my resource here. All I'm seeing is Silent Resolve. If you have 5 talents of that, you can get a 0.8% threat multiplier on your spells. So I think you may have to check your sources on that information there. That's all I see for Priest on this threat page from 2007.
All right, I'll see if I can find that.
Yeah. All right, Tettles, what are we watching here on our TV screen?
All right, so this is just another way that you can skip Inquisitor's Cigar in Halls of Atonement, and it's if you have a Venthyr, you can actually just port straight through the door. You're going to probably want a combat drop, so you can disengage Lord Chamberlain and not have the person die, but you can just Venthyr gate through the door. It's like apparently like a 4-pixel window to be able to do it, but it is doable. This allows you to not have to use rocket fuel and shit.
That room on really high keys is like a 2-minute time sink. So this is like a minute 30 gain. on the dungeon.
Yeah.
How
Now,
does everybody else
like
get
a-
through?
well, you pull
yeah,
boss, you
shroud or
meld,
invis.
and then it opens the door, right? That's what has happened here.
Oh, so everybody else just will invis behind him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, that's a very cool video.
That's cheesy.
I'm gonna link that. I like that. Hit the subscribe button here, and we'll link the video as well.
There you go. There you go.
You're subscribing to that guy.
Dude, this is cool. This is cool content. I need to know about these sorts of things.
I have some more forbidden tech next week, if I
Awesome.
remember.
The best thing about this is just make sure you tell all MDI participants about these sorts of skips of crucial content, so because they might not be aware of them and they might then be able to use them in their MDI runs.
And then it'll get fixed immediately once they start using it.
Well, the joke is they're not allowed to use these. So
Yeah.
people keep telling MDI players about like the bow breakers to activate the first boss in mists earlier, but you're not allowed to use that stuff in MDI this season.
They would probably be allowed to use that. You just gate through the door.
No, you're definitely not allowed to just completely skip the mini boss room here.
Okay, maybe not. Actually, never mind. They got
That
told
would have
they
been
weren't-
like
they actually got
that
told
would
they
have
weren't
like
allowed
skipping
to
the
skip that.
turtle in Freehold on MDI keys.
Yeah, all of that stuff
Remember that?
is banned in Shadowlands, basically.
Yeah, that shit never happened.
Yeah.
Nobody ever skipped any awakened mobs.
Well, that's different, right? Because that's like the affix has a way that it interacts with you there.
I know. I was kidding.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's different.
That would still be allowed, I think. Like that 4 awakened mob kite in the circle.
That was cool.
Yeah, I'm sure. if that sort of thing's getting banned, then I'm really unhappy. But just
Yeah, that
like
was
making it
awesome.
so you can't, clip through a wall or whatever. I don't really care. Fine by me.
Yeah.
That was like a high skill mechanic too. Like you had to manage so much threat and movement and survivability to kite all 4 mini bosses as the healer. That was
Yeah,
crazy.
your tank had to like not health pot too early because it would generate too much healing threat, and they would snap back to the group.
Well, that was one of the things I liked was that you also saw those failures. It wasn't something that was like I didn't like the Pride skips in particular because it was like Pride comes out, Invispot, woo, but it was like Awakened. You saw multiple teams just lose games because it is just like, oh, he health potted. Well, they ran that risk and they found out, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
as the saying goes.
Remember when MDI team skipped every mechanic of Machimba, the entire expansion, and then they fixed Machimba right after all the MDIs?
True.
Wait, they fixed it?
I
Yeah,
did
they
not
fixed
know
it in like the
fixed it.
final patch right before Shadowlands.
Yeah, that one's also one that they probably that like wouldn't be banned at all under current rules or anything. It's literally just like if you entirely skip a boss or trash pack that you're not supposed to be able to.
The patch that you can skip Shadows, well, they got told do not do that as well.
Oh yeah,
So-
that's actually a really relatable example to this. Like
Interesting,
that,
yeah,
that
I
would
didn't even know
definitely
about
not be allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was forever ago, but yeah.
Dude, was the seesaw thing, or you didn't even need seesaw, right? But you needed the demon
could
hunter
just
to like
Demon Hunter.
yeah,
double
yeah.
jump over the wall.
That was back when MDI was still in person.
Okay.
Remember the
Long
seesaw
time ago.
skip in Black or Cold where you could go up to the second boss from the foyer? Do you guys remember that?
The foyer.
Foyer from like where the night elf mobs jump down into that foyer, right below the boss. Man, that might
Oh,
be kind of
you could
abstract.
go straight up there and you wouldn't have to go around the side?
Yeah, you could seesaw
Huh.
up to that platform.
I
don't remember
Run
that.
doing something similar.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever find there was this pillar in this room upstairs in Waycrest Manor? It was the second one, like over on the right, and then you turned left. So you got top right, and then you turned left, and there was just this
Oh, yeah.
room with like horrible trash. Nobody ever went to it.
0 count trash that killed you instantly.
Yeah, there was this pillar in that room as you walked into that room on your right, and if you ran into it at the correct angle, you just clip through.
That's right.
And you
And
get
you just
under
walk into the
Waycrest
room.
Manor, and you can
Yeah,
just
yeah.
then walk around under the foundations of the building, clip through everything.
Jump up to like
to the Heartsbane Triad if you wanted. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a
I
cool
don't-
strat. Yeah. I never
could
used it,
go
but I
all
did
the way
run
over
around there
to
for like
the-
30 minutes in an M0 to look around.
You could like pop out right behind the tree boss into his arena area. If you
yeah.
did that.
They also put a void emissary there
Yeah.
some weeks.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know who could
yeah.
have possibly have ever ran into that void emissary trying to
Just-
tease some shit.
Just in case some people wanted to pull that trash, they reminded them not to.
Well, it was bad if you were a rogue and you were just used to running around in stealth everywhere, because those things would see you
Oh,
from
yeah.
farther in stealth than if you weren't in stealth. So you would pull if you ran next to that room in stealth, but not if you were out of stealth. That was a good time. All right, let's move on to a little bit of discussion of the metagame that's coming up in 9.2 in M+. So we're going to mostly talk about what we expect once 4-set and double legendaries are available. This is going to be, on all MDI, we assume all of that's going to be available for as soon as there's an MDI, because there just usually is that kind of power there. And then for live high key pushing, presumably mostly the pushing will start once people have this kind of gear. And before that, there'll be some, but it won't be like, it'll still be very much in that like early climb stage.
It'll be Nerf getting world first 15, world first 25, whatever.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Right. Yeah. So based off that, that's where we're going to be coming from. Also, it's worth noting, a lot of stuff is still up to change. A lot of the stuff we said last week has changed because of this most recent round of tuning, and if there's another round of tuning next week, a lot of this stuff could change. So do bear that in mind. But let's get started with tanks, which is the specialty of Trell. Trell, you are a world-renowned brewmaster, which you've also been playing a lot on PTR.
Yeah.
How is that spec been working out?
Oh, Brewmaster's in a really good spot, especially because of the tier set. Hopefully it's not changed too much. It's like a 50-50 if that gets nerfed at all, because in Raid it's really not that big of a deal. It's not like a huge power game, but as soon as you have multiple mobs, like 5+ mobs in any pull, it's massive for Brewmaster. And I think that puts Brew at like the top spot with Paladin. Paladin also has a very broken tier set, as well as just an overall good kit this expansion.
Yeah, so Paladin, is it Kyrian and M+ that we're thinking about?
Yeah, Divine Toll. Like everything is based around Divine Toll with Paladin. Like instant threat, no need for tricks, basically with any spec in your group. It gives them a massive shield because of the first Avenger, or whatever the Avenger shield talent is, that gives them a massive shield for every shield that goes out. And also silences every mob, and its CD is reduced by the Mykonikos Soulbind, and so it's like a 30-second CD or 40-second CD, I think.
Yeah, and then the legendary is just sending out extra shields every 5 seconds, and dude, that set bonus as well, where you just cast judgments when you block stuff.
3-second ICD. Like it's so good. It also, Prop Paladin also has this misconception that they are not tanky and that they're just glass cannons. That is fake. Prop Paladin is incredibly tanky.
They are the most tanky in general. Like Guardian Druid beats them only when they're an incarn, and otherwise Prop Pally is always tankier than any other tank. And this patch, especially now that they have 2 legendary access, they're going to wear the what's it called, Ardent Defender legendary, and that's going to basically give them Ardent Defender for the entire pull, every single pull.
Yeah, I did a couple of dungeons on PTR with a Prop Pally, and so I have Symbol of Hope as a Holy Priest, which will reduce Ardent Defender's cooldown for them.
Oh my god, that is so good, actually.
And so he activates Ardent Defender, and I'm like, oh, I'll give you a cooldown reduction. He's like, well, it's almost back. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, it's almost back again. I'm like, all right. See him activate it again, and I slam down Symbol, and then he just chains one into another. I was like, oh my god.
That's not broken.
Literally just chaining a cheat death on top of itself. Feels good.
Yeah, Pally is like the #1 tank in my mind by a little bit.
What about the other tanks? What about stuff like Warrior, Vengeance, Guardian, Blood Death Knight? Blood Death Knight has a nice set for this, right?
Yeah, DK was buffed a lot because of their set for this season. It's up there in like the A tier in my mind with Guardian Druid. So DK, Guardian, and Vengeance are all like A tier tanks. Brewmaster, Prop Pally, S tier ish. And then poor Prot Warrior just didn't get much good from this tier set, and they're down in the B tier.
Call Pika, he's crying.
Yeah, do you feel like it'll be another tier like this last one where it was kind of just like any tank that is good, whatever they like to play, is going to work out? Or do you think it'll be like a big gulf with Prop Pally and or Brew getting up there?
I think it's going to be a lot like this season, yeah. Almost every single tank is very, very powerful and feels good now with the tier sets and everything. But I think the top 2 levels of keys, maybe 3 levels, as you can see with Andy's group, are going to be dominated by Prop Al and Brewmaster.
As Andy plays both.
Yeah, whichever one Andy chooses to play next year. Yeah. All right, yeah, very cool. I agree. I think the tanks on PTR, it feels so good to play basically any tank. I do think Warrior could use a little bit of a buff just for both Raid and M+. Prot Warrior could use some love, but even there, it still feels pretty good to play, and the other tank specs all feel fantastic to play. on PTR, and you'll hear tanks saying like, "Wow, this feels like," everybody's like, "Oh, this feels broken," right? And you play a different tank spec, and you're like, "Oh, this feels broken," which is a great place to be, and it's so different from patch 9.0, where it's like, "Oh, this tank is dead. Oh, this tank is also dead."
Yep.
Yeah.
7.3 tanks unkillable, 8.3 tanks unkillable, 9.2 tanks unkillable. Who could have foreseen the last patch of the expansion tanks just aren't killable?
Good.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah,
time.
there's a big difference between the first patch of an expansion and the last for a tank player. It's like worlds of difference of how long you can stay in each pull. Especially this time when they had to nerf the auto attacks on the mobs in season 1, like twice.
Yeah.
Like,
Dude, I forgot
it
about
was
the
so
white
bad.
I remember that. They were just like, you're just dying to auto attacks.
Dude,
That was
Sire
crazy.
Denathrius was just this epic boss fight at the end of a tier, Mythic Sire, and like every auto attack would hit you for like 60% of your health, and you'd be like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, this is so fun to tank." And then like 2 white mobs in Sanguine Depths would each hit you for twice that much damage with their auto. You'd be like,
what the fuck, man?
"This is not
How
how
am I
this is supposed to
live
look."
this?
Why don't you guys go and dethrone Sire Denathrius? Like, you're strong enough. You take him
It
out.
just it makes tank gameplay so not fun to me, at least. I think some people enjoy it, but the way you had to do the things that season was press every single defensive at the exact same time and then kite the entire rest of the pool.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you could do to live, and like hope you had aggro and just AFK. Something we should mention though for tanks before we move on is I think the Vengeance Demon Hunter set is perceived as just wildly broken for high keys. It's really good set, honestly, but it's more meant for MDI keys because it's not going to save them from getting one shot into the higher levels, but it will provide an insane amount of self healing until that point.
And
Yeah,
what
So
is
it's like BIS for 15s, but it's not BIS for
20s too,
25s.
probably, right? It's
Like
like
20s, yeah, like MDI, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
what's the skinny of the VDH set bonus? Is
Your
it just like during meta you heal a bunch?
your immolation aura shears souls from stuff that it's hitting. And you're also getting cooldown reduction on immolation aura and fell devastation when you consume souls. But in a sufficiently big pull, every tick of aura is going to be spawning multiple souls. Any souls you spawn past 5 are auto consumed to heal you for a percentage of your health plus a percentage of damage taken recently. And so it scales really well with extra mobs, extra things hitting you, a lot of small things hitting you. You're going to be generating huge amounts of souls and healing yourself for huge percentages of that damage that's coming in. And also casting Immolation Aura and Fell Devastation on a very short cooldown. So, but,
Yeah.
you know,
The
you're only
Fell
fighting
Dev
3 targets,
cooldown-
not doing that much.
Yeah.
The Fell Dev cooldown reduction is pretty big for survival, but other than that, it doesn't really scale that well into high keys. It just doesn't prevent them from being clapped by the big pulls, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is I did a couple keys and with a VDH tank, and that was exactly my experience. It was like, okay, they have demon spikes up, they have meta up. All right, they're just healing like a ridiculous amount. Okay, they go into the next pull, they don't have anything, and then they just get like triple hits or something like that by mobs, and then they instantly fall over and die. Like, oh.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, up next, let's talk about healers. Healers,
Yeah.
the AutomaticJak specialty. So to set the stage a little bit, going into this, like this patch, it was kind of Holy Paladin land, right? Where Holy Paladin, Ashen Hallow, big damage. Don't really care about healing. Somebody else can take care of that. And
Tettles will.
Yeah, Tettles will heal. Don't worry.
Need heart here. Need heart here.
Less than season 1, right? Where it was actually just the Moonkin would heal every pull, but
Yeah.
still like that. Now, going into this coming PTR build, a couple weeks ago we saw the big nerfs to Holy Paladin. How much has that shaken things up for M+ healing, do you suspect?
I'm pretty excited, honestly. I think that not only was there like the Holy Paladin nerfs, but you also had damage buffs for Resto Druid and for Holy Priest, which were just healers that were beaten down into the dust, really, for M+. I mean, Holy Priest always has been basically beaten down into the dust, but I mean, Resto Druid in particular going from like the best healer for multiple expansions or one of the best healers for multiple expansions to just not wanted at all in high-end keys is very, very weird. So I would say I'm very excited in general about the next tier, that most of the healers will be able to be possible to play in high keys, but there still is like sort of bad range. Like Shaman being way too high up. You saw like the buff to Elysian Dirge, and they said, "Oh, JK, we're gonna put it back down where it belongs." Like I don't know why they did that, but then you also just recently had the Venthyr nerf for Mistweavers, where they're not spawning clones as frequently. I think we brushed over it pretty quick in the class changes and everything, but they're nerfing some of the cooldown reduction there. But the problem is Mistweaver doesn't really deal any passive damage. It doesn't have Consecrate. It doesn't dot up anything whatsoever. So the second that you take away a little healing from them, now they're going to have to spend more time actually casting healing spells in a dungeon, which affects mana. It's going to affect their damage overall, and losing the shard bonuses as well further reduces their damage. So like Mistweaver is just like, relative to everybody else, it's just horrible damage. And for like really, really high end keys, I think that's the spec that's gonna like struggle the most.
So what's the deal with double legendary for a lot of these healer specs? Because obviously Resto Shaman just runs double damage legendary and dances on your grave as they do infinite DPS. What's the other? Are the other healers also like that?
Somewhat. Mistweaver, I tried running the Touch Death legendary, so it's only like a minute. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, it's a minute. It's a 15% damage buff to my physical attacks. Terrible. Oh, my God. Actually, terrible. I was doing less damage. And of course, there's the shard difference, right? Where I don't have shards on. But I was like, I feel like I was doing less damage than I usually do on live server keys and stuff. So
the problem with that legendary, for like every monk spec, is that it requires you to get to the end of the pole to use it. Yeah. Where it doesn't actually help you do anything in the pole until that point.
It's just so poor. So I don't know. Maybe you play like Ancient Teachings. Maybe you play Invokers to get like some haste. But I don't know. Like your abilities just like don't do damage on their own, so it doesn't feel good. Of like whatever your second Lego that you would end up taking. I just like looked around at all the options and I'm just like, eh.
So do you think it'll still be Venthyr with the change here?
Probably, yeah. I mean, you could run Necro, because if I remember correctly, Bonedust Brew never crit for heals anyway. Citation needed, but I'm like 99% sure that it didn't do that anyway. So it's like, yay, little buff, and like Necro is fine. But again, it's the same problem where it's like, hey, Bonedust Brew will replicate your attacks, but if your attacks don't do damage, it's not giving you much of anything, you know?
So coming into this week, I had pit Resto Druid against Resto Shaman as probably the two best healers.
I remember you had a big article about that.
How are the J-Dot Babes going to be doing now?
I think they're within like the acceptable range, I would say. I don't know if they're still going to run Kyrian, and I have to ask the J-Babes and everything about that, but when they were like really, really strong and everything, I don't think that they're getting brought down to Mistweaver levels or anything along those lines. I think it's kind of like Paladin's still going to be dealing like acceptable enough amounts of damage. I'm kind of curious if some of these like really crazy MDI pulls might be like interesting value for canceling Ashen, like having your Ashen for this big pull, but canceling it so you can have it to start the other pull. Because one of the nice benefits of Ashen is just being able to kind of stabilize everybody as a pull gets started and not have to worry about any sort of healing at the start. And then all the pressure is kind of just on your tank, right? There's no like one little melee here on somebody else or no cast that goes off onto somebody else. So
that's the Venthyr legendary, right? Is when you walk out of your Hallow, it like disappears and gives you CDR.
I think they just changed it so you could just press the button again and then it'll cancel it.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I've never seen that.
Yeah. So that way you don't have to, oh guys, let me run out really quickly to force it and then go back and stuff, right? Basically.
Yeah.
So whatever Pally does, like their baseline kit is already really strong damage as is. Holy Priest usually runs like Flash Concentration, where you just spam the heal button 5 million times over and that's all you do.
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, now you're going to be able to run the Kyrian Legendary, which gives you another minute of boon CD reduction. So you go from a 3-minute CD to 2 minutes with the Legendary to 1 more minute with Mikanikos. So that'll be pretty good damage. Usually it's like top end damage, top 3 in terms of your damage dealt. So that's always going to be really nice, especially because the encrypted affix, I know is it still bugged right now where it's giving you more Covenant cooldown reduction than before?
I actually don't know on this PTR build.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to see this week. But
it was very bugged though. Yeah, like I was pressing a 2-minute CD every 10 seconds during that CDR.
Yeah, but it still should be strong CDR for your ability, which would still allow, because basically what you do is you activate the ability, and then your smite becomes like a lava burst, effectively. But it's like a 2 or 3 second cooldown lava burst. So I think even still, with that cooldown reduction, you're still going to be chucking lava bursts every global, especially if you get any haste increases. So Boon is obscenely strong for Holy Priest. It hits extremely hard, and in the PTR keys I was doing, it was actually out DPSing Disc Priests. And part of the reason for that is actually the tanks. Because the tanks are so much stronger now, they're so much more self-sustainable now.
That's a good point, man.
Holy Priest doesn't have to take as many actions to like slam healing into their tank 24/7. Because if you're in the middle of Boon, it does like a nominal amount of healing. But if a tank's really getting high pressure on him, I was usually using like Guardian Spirit on the tank every time I booned, just to make sure they wouldn't cheat death, right? So there's a number of buffs to help make tanks more sustainable. You have Symbol of Hope getting buffed, which knocks a minute off of all major cooldowns. So that's Metamorphosis, that's Shield Wall, Fort Brew, which is kind of meh, Ardent Defender, which is really good.
Man, that's Ardent Defender versus Fort Brew is actually so unfair.
Exactly. That's why I had to list them together, because you're like, well, but Fort Brew's good, right? But not next to Ardent Defender, you know?
I see.
I think it's Icebound Fortitude for Blood Decays and Bark Skin
so
for
fake.
Bears.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so like some tanks you have ridiculous synergy with, right? Where you're saying, just an infinite feedback loop every 3 minutes. I'll reset your AD immediately or your Bark Skin immediately, right?
Bark Skin is actually a damage button for Guardian this patch.
Yeah.
Even better.
So that's actually really good for Guardian if you play with Barry.
Yeah, so that's now a 3-minute CD. Guardian Spirit got changed, so it's a healing effect and it's a cheat death. But the talent now is if the cheat death procs, you don't lose the healing effect. So you maintain that 80% healing effect for 12 seconds. And
that's really good. I like that.
So
and
do
I
you
think, to round out my Holy Priest thought, I think that you might actually be able to get away with not running a healing legendary and flash concentration in some keys in some instances. Right now, one of your set bonus buffs is that abilities which reduce your holy words will give you a damage or healing increase depending on what they are. So like you have a holy word chastise, which is like a stun or a disorient, and then its smite will reduce its cooldown. But a legendary harmonious apparatus will cause other abilities to reduce those holy words. So I believe it's bugged, but it should work the way I think it will. Where if you cast Holy Fire, it'll be buffed off your set bonus. So it's like you cast a Holy Word, you cast a Holy Fire, that Holy Fire is buffed. It'll reduce your Chastise, which will then allow you to cast Chastise again, and your next heal is buffed. So you can get this constant feedback loop of like cooldown reduction that'll be very mana efficient, so you don't actually have to spam your tank all that much, and then you can pump out more damage that way.
So do you suspect that this will mean top groups will consider or use Holy Priest, or do you think this is more a case of like Holy Priests that already wanted to play Holy Priest will see more success?
I think part of it is really trying to like break past the social barrier aspect of it. I think there's a lot of good to it, but I do not think it's better than a shaman.
Okay.
Which is the entire sort of issue at hand.
And people already play shaman, so it's gonna be really hard to break into that meta.
People already play shaman. They already got it leveled. They already know it's really good. The play style isn't really changing all that much for it from the testing I've done. People are running like the Earthquake Lego like they usually do. And there is this elemental legendary I haven't played around with yet, but I heard about that one. I need to test that out. But apparently that was doing similar damage. So either way, it's like, okay, shamans already still know how to play this stuff. They're already out there in multitudes. So, I mean, I probably am going to be in a position where I'll still push on priests to start. But if that gap, because that's really the problem, is when I got to like 2.9, or actually probably 2.8 when we were trying to get 2.9, you just really notice, oh, I'm doing like half the damage, that this other healer is doing. And part of it is also burst damage too. Right. You may not need to have like a super high overall in a dungeon. You may not need like really high boss damage, but you need to do a ridiculous amount of damage for like spear pulls in Spires of Ascension. You need to do it on shard pulls and Halls of Atonement, because otherwise your tank would just melt. So
first boss of mists, big
first boss of mists, same story, right? There's these timing pulls where you need to use everything, destroy it, or it destroys you, and healer damage will matter a lot in those areas. So I'd say top 3 for Holy Priest at the moment. I don't know if it's better than a Paladin, but I know it's definitely on its way up. And then I think it would be like Disc below that. Disc or Rest of Druid, pretty close together. Because Disc, basically, you can just use Power Infusion, the Lego there, and you can have Power Infusion for yourself and somebody else. And you still, get good value out of Boon and the cooldown reduction there. It's more of the same, but...
Are any of the healers unplayable? Whatever your level of unplayable is?
No. So, like, every healer can do a great job of, like, healing dungeons. And it was a mix of two things. It was encounter design and it was healer design for Shadowlands. Because there really aren't that many scary boss fights. We don't really have like a Toll de Gore or a Waycrest Manor. We don't have Waycrest Triad of, oh, I missed a kick. Now we just can't heal this anymore. Oh, we're doing the mechanics of Golvots correctly, but it's Grievous week and we're all dying, right? Like you just had certain healers in BFA that had the kits and could deal with the encounter design, the brutal encounter design, but now they kind of declawed a lot of encounters and they're not really that challenging. You'll have like Crixus, which is pretty challenging, you know, but even a fight which is like high damage, like Barilla, third boss of Sanguine Depths, like just plan out your cooldowns, you know. Last boss of Plaguefall, just plan out your defenses, plan out your cooldowns, and it's not nearly as hard as a lot of like BFA bosses were to heal. But then the other side of it is also they homogenized a lot of healers' abilities from legendaries, and they say, oh, hey, here's flash concentration, so this really weak and slow heal ability is just obscenely strong and obscenely mana efficient, so you can top everybody and you can just pound healing all day, you know. Mistweaver, their mana efficiency gets a lot better because they were one of those healers in BFA that could heal all the content, but then they just go in 5 seconds. Now they can heal everything no problem and they don't have to stress, you know. So Shaman, I think, is like the biggest turnaround too. Shaman was just a nightmare healer in a lot of high keys in BFA, and now they're ridiculously good at healing and damage. So not mad that Shaman's on top, but I want a little more love, in particular for Mistweaver, to kind of bring it back, go closer to the pack.
Bring back Way of the Crane.
Yeah, that would help a pretty good amount.
All right, we also have a DPS, and DPS has 24 specs, and 2 of them will be in every group of this upcoming season. That is the Frost Mage and the Rogue, the Subtlety Rogue, which, wow, these specs are great. They're great now. They're continuing to be great. Nothing's stopping them from being great. Things are getting better for them in a lot of ways next patch.
Okay, I'm interested to see how Rogue ends up actually faring as the season goes along. Because I think Rogue's AoE damage potential is going to be a little bit lower this season, just generally compared to some of the other specs. Like Sub is getting like an okay AoE 4 set, but it's like sustained AoE, and Sub is definitely a broken spec. So I don't know why you would not see them, but I think that their like overall damage is going to be a little bit on the lower end. But I saw them all of BFA season 4, so I expect nothing more than to see another Rogue.
I was gonna say, yeah, even if their damage is lower, they could be lower than the 2 monster AoE classes in the group by a lot. It'd still be brought because
prior damage as well. Like
Sub
is a prior monster, so that's not going to show up on the meters. But even if they didn't, like Outlaw wasn't a prior monster in season 4 of BFA, it was just there doing tank dam and shrouds and gouges and kidney shots and stuff, and that's enough.
Frostmage is the main character though. Like if you're seriously looking for a ranged DPS to play and you're kind of on the fence about something, make a Frostmage. Like that shit is broken.
I've been doing a little bit of Frost keys on PTR, and I am very bad at Frost. Like,
and you do a very large amount of
and
damage,
I'm like
don't
top
you?
damage, or I'm up, which is like weird, right? Like the spec's not hard, but I'm not good at it like that. But it's so much damn.
Yeah.
Like every third Frozen Orb is just going off to, it's going back over to BFA. It's taking a air trip off the edge, and still it's just the spec's so good.
Isn't it still like ridiculous cooldown reduction for him too?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I can just PI them whenever, and they just still do fat damn. Like
it's just a constant damage class.
Unless you die, like you press veins, you die, then you're sad boy hours for a couple pulls, but. Other than that, it's all sunshine, full on uptime of everything. The Covenant item levels, the crit levels, all of those have these nice multiplicative effects on uptime on veins and stuff. So you're just, full on vibing the whole time.
It's kind of similar to how BM Hunter was so good in season 4 BFA. They were just high damage, constant CDs the entire time. And that's basically what Frost Mage is now, but with even more utility, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you don't fall over to a breeze, a swift breeze.
They're a mage, so they don't die. Also,
the constant slow for tanks is like unparalleled too. It's so good.
It's also like unironically that a bunch of Mythic Plus Rat players have rerolled to mage over the course of time, and now just if you want to do a high end key, like you play a mage, and it's just good every season. It's like the melee people rerolled to rogue, and the ranged people rerolled to mage if you want to be brought to every dungeon. And again. Rogue and Mage, top of the list here.
Luckily, there is a third DPS slot. Now, you could put a Mage in that slot and be totally fine, or a Rogue or something, but you could also play something else. You could play... There's a lot of stuff that looks potentially interesting there. Survival Hunter, they fixed a lot of the bugs with the Survival Hunter damage on PTR, so I'm curious to see what kind of damage they're doing now. Before they fixed those bugs, they were doing a lot of damn. Destro Locks also, huge AoE damage. Moonkin for a little bit less of the burst AoE. Yeah, a little more of a support role, which, has been valuable in the past. Could be valuable again.
I'm interested to see how a couple of the melee specs do, specifically like Havoc and Windwalker Monk. I think that Windwalker is gonna be not that great. Like they gotta, their AOE is just not as phenomenal.
Honestly, the nerf to Windwalker isn't as big as it seems. I think it's only like a 5 to 10% nerf. And if they fix their tier set, which has not worked properly ever yet, I think they're gonna do a lot of damage.
Okay, we'll see. So it may be Windwalker again in that third DPS slot, assuming like if all those things get fixed, it would not shock me.
They're definitely going to fix that. Nothing's ever going to make it to live in an extremely bugged state for an entire patch for Windwalker. So I think we can all rely on that getting fixed.
Yeah, for Windwalker specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
They definitely don't just buff that shit 10% with a bug fix in the middle of a patch. That's never happened,
dude. I do think Windwalker's closer to a lot of other DPS now after that nerf, though. Like, I think Warrior might be able to contend with it, even. I think Havoc, like you mentioned, may be able to be up there. We'll see.
What's your biggest desirable third DPS pick for this next patch, Trail?
Something with an AoE stun or an AoE stop of some sort that doesn't rip threat immediately.
So a Destro Warlock.
Destro Warlock would be okay. The Hellstones are nice. The gateways are nice.
There's a nice bug with Destro Lock on PTR right now. I actually don't know if they fixed it with this build, but the last build where your Blasphemy procs, your set bonus procs of Infernal, if the mobs were already stunned by a hard cast Infernal and then a Blasphemy Infernal stuns them during that stun, they would remain stunned indefinitely. It was a permanent stun on the mobs for the rest of the combat. Yeah,
the freaking cats and spires.
We stunned like 5 of the 6 of them for the whole pull.
I died to the cats. Like I got stunned even though I was breaking them out of stealth. I died instantly, and then the Infernal spawned and stunned all 6 cats, and I just walked back and nobody died because they were stunned forever. Good stuff.
Destro's 4 set is so broken for Mythic Plus. They're like they're going to do awful single target boss damage, but they're a trash specialist, and I suspect they're probably going to be like one of, if not the highest AoE next patch. They just have permanent Infernal, and even without the buff, they just have Infernal up all the time. It feels like.
I kind of like the idea of Elemental Shaman as well for M+ next season. Their set bonus, also quite a sweet M+ one. Now, it wasn't very high in the spec for Raid, but that's another one that I am somewhat hopeful for.
I feel like the biggest thing, though, is a second mage. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. Full, like Storm Ellie every pack, multiple Eye of the Storms, and on pulls. It's sweet.
The biggest thing is definitely who can do the most AoE damage, though, because the way the damage profiles have been this season, at least, is you're good as long as you have a sub rogue who can funnel or do high single target, and then the other 2 classes could just be like monster AoE classes and not have to do very much single target, and you could do the highest level keys. So if Frost Mage and Rogue say the same, which so far they are with their damage profiles, that's exactly what you want.
All right. Once again, we forgot to mention Rep Pally last episode, and we're not going to talk about them this episode as well. Sorry to Rep Paladin fans.
Rip Dazer.
If it was not mentioned, it's probably middle of the pack, which in Mythic Plus terms it means it's kind of bad.
Or we forgot, which has happened before. But yeah.
If it's not high on our radar, then it means it's like normally like not that great. The Spriest was like, I was actually pretty hot on Spriest.
Yeah.
That shit got gutted. That shit's dead.
Yeah, Spriest, Survival Hunter, Feral Druid were all really, really good last week for keys, and now they're all gone, I think.
Well, Feral got soft cap past 8. I'm still...
No, they got hard capped past 8, I think.
No, I think it's soft cap. I'm not 100% sure, but... Yeah, reduce damage beyond 8 targets.
Oh, okay, never mind. Soft cap, you're right.
The spec is not, like... I mean, in really big pulls, their set bonus was doing a huge amount of damage, but I don't know, like 10-pack pulls, they're going to be doing basically the same amount of damage. It's so much.
That specs like 40% of its damage in a dungeon would be that 4 set, by the way.
All right, we have a couple of Q&A questions to get to, but first, we get to thank our supporters over on the Patreon. Up first, we have somebody whose name presumably hasn't been updated for the newest PTR build, which is Friendship with Riptide ended, now Renewing Mist is my best friend. Next up, my Rafflecopter has entered the server, schwa schwa schwa. How did I convince an Alliance Pug to bring my 186 lock to a +2? Ja, Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Never Nude, Chewy, Boomkins are simping every damage doers, or based. Delete Gaming, it's not AMZ, it's AMZ, Salty Senny, Necris, Tank Dill, Nevuk, Brad Ceratops, Sinmora, Eevee, Survival Main, No Trick, I Scheduled Heddle's Flame, Dymat, Lufer, Nyx. PTR is giving me blue balls for 9.2, Gallic, Brusif, Dratnos Rats Abyss, M+ rating is a disease, M Sanity, Xena, Rogue now good enough for Prague, still bad enough to be sat for SLG, bless up. Dude, my guild nearly did SLG this week. We nearly went Castle Nathria for the Sun King's Cheat Death Trinket, but then we learned that the Fate Scribe Cheat Death Trinket... The Fate Scribe Cheat Death Trinket is getting changed to be just better than the Sun King one next patch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're just going to get
What
that
tank
instead.
needed that cheat death, though?
I'm tanking again for next tier, so my Paladin Dratnos is our other tank quit, so I've been reconscripted. So that character was a real rat in raid this week. Let me tell you. Red color, youtube.com/workbringer, Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Evolved Gaming, #1 Simpsky for Trelsky. Chloric seems to accidentally get Lurka killed in keys a lot more frequently these days. Is it the tank's fault, or was Lurka out of position? I got flamed for not interrupting an Arathi Basin comp stomp. R.I.P. in peace, comp stomp. I'll miss you. Milk. B-Nile, a.k.a. YOLO Swag Crew. Word around the Mage Tower is Trell has fantastic eyeballs and is now 3k. Sife, Pone. Windwalker monks deal with nerfs by rolling with the punches. And Wonder. Thanks a lot.
I got bad news. Those are all last week's names. I didn't update any of them. I'm so sorry.
All right, well,
it's fine.
Anybody anybody whose name was done
last
wrong,
week's names.
please take it up with Tuttles, and he will
File
personally
a complaint
make it up to you.
Tuttles.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
All right, our first question comes from Theon in Discord, who says, aside from give every healer more damage or give every healer a DR in raid, are there any super useful tools for M+ that could add to a few healer specs that are underrepresented that wouldn't make them broken or overpowered? Things like Shaman Kick, but of course, Shaman happens to do the most damage in the current PTR as well, but that sort of thing.
I mean, that's part of the hard thing, too, is like you're looking at what else could there be that could be brought to the table that's also like unique and important, because you'll have like Mind Soothe, right? But if you have a rogue, like who cares about Mind Soothe, you know? You'll have a kick, but if you're running like a heavier melee group, then that kick will have more niche areas like Spires of Ascension. It's like, oh wow, it's great to just assign one kick to the Goliath every single time, but is it, oh my god, super critical every dungeon? Less so. Maybe because of the fact that the healer meta has really shifted so heavily towards wanting damage. Like one of the biggest things of the past of BFA, of Legion, was the output and the efficiency of the output in a 5-man environment, right? Druid had it in spades thanks to their mastery. Paladin in Legion was amazing with Beacon of Virtue, and going into BFA and everything, I don't think they really ran much of that at all, but they had Glimmer, right? Which is just fantastic for a lot of 5-man environments. Now, everybody can really heal very well, so I don't think there's much in the way of crowd control that's left. There's billions of stuns and slows and hard CCs and everything that are in the game at the moment. So I'd say it's probably less of that and more along the lines of finding ways to alter the damage profiles of some healers. Maybe having some that can provide like a big single target nuke on a lengthier cooldown, and maybe that could be some kind of mix of like a healing and damage ability. Because that was kind of what Divine Star and Halo did back in the day, is they dealt tremendously larger amounts of damage and healing, right? So maybe something along those lines, but also they could try to follow along the lines of Holy Priest and Symbol of Hope, where it's giving defensive cooldown reduction Why can't there be something that's giving some offensive cooldown reduction? Why can't there be something that's, further empowering power infusion, for example, but always naturally giving you something back depending on who you're casting it on? Why not build up some of these lower DPS specs, not only in ways that are giving them better damage contribution, but they don't necessarily have to be from that healer specifically dealing lots of damage. Like, for what it's worth, I'm surprised Mistweaver doesn't have like Dance of Chi-Ji, I think is what it is for Windwalker. I'm surprised they don't have any sort of like proc system to do AoE damage better. Because their single target's fine-ish, but it's just, when it comes into mass AoE, it's just a mess,
That's a really good idea for Mistweaver.
And you naturally have all these different abilities, but there's no Fist of Fury. Why is there no Fist of Fury that can turn into a healing setup? Why is it a legendary is required to turn your damage abilities into healing? Why is there not like a better sort of merge in quality on those, right?
Well, I think to me it's also kind of awkward because some of these healers do have these things, right? Like Resto Shaman and Resto Druid have so many tools. And you may disagree with this, Jack, but I do feel like Resto Druid for the longest time, I mean, one of the reasons that they were brought, they brought a battle res. They were able to like
Roots,
weave
Typhoon,
damage while also healing.
Stealth.
Roots, Typhoon, Ursul's Vortex, Stealth. Like they brought all of that stuff. Shaman, we haven't seen Shaman until this expansion, and they always had a kick. Earth Elemental, really good button. It is a very good button. Hex is maybe not the best button, but like they also have they have Cap Totem. They have an AoE
Earthblind
slow,
Totem too.
Which I mean, yeah, they have a lot of good utility, and they were still never really brought to dungeons. And so I think it's more like just the dynamic for how Mythic Plus is set up for the healing role specifically, that it's just tough because you could overload their kit with utility, and I'm sure they would get brought if they were just that broken. You'd have fucking Moon can heal for you, but like at some point. But I don't even think it's just one thing, and I think that you actually have to make them broken or OP to even move the needle on some of these specs, like Mistweaver and H Priest specifically.
Well, I mean, part of it is encounter design, though, because it's cool having roots and all, but how often are you really, really needing it? You're not seeing like the difference between like chesting and not chesting a Plaguefall as to whether you use roots on Globkrog, right? Or whether you use roots on Blightbone and Necrotic Wake. You could just kill them, So I think part of that might have to go hand in hand with like encounter design. Do you want these big scary bosses where certain specs are super powerful because they bring specific utility? I kind of don't. I think charging ahead into this frontier where, hey, it's a great job that they did to make healers all capable of healing high dungeons. That's great. Now make boss fights a little scarier again, like we saw previously in BFA. Not exactly the same, because sometimes there were just dumb combos.
Last
and
boss Toldegor,
right? Yeah,
any doubles?
I don't need any last boss Toldegor random doubles, right? But I think they moved the needle a little bit too far in the ease direction.
And now 0 HPS Holy Paladin, the most dominant healer.
yeah. So I think there is some kind of like safe spot, but I'd like to see something in the lines of like different healers that aren't bringing like raid-wide DR, getting something that is bringing party-wide defensive, raid-wide defensive, that is not just flat DR to the group, or maybe something that's actually going to be like a damage increase to your team. Something along those lines would be a lot more interesting.
Fury Totem.
Lightwell.
Yeah.
Click on Lightwell to get healed.
Oh, no, not Lightwell.
Good one.
Oh, jeez. I forgot about that thing.
All right. Our next question sort of dovetails with that one. It's from Naro, who asks, seeing Encrypted also giving quite a few skip options and DPS boosts. How valuable will healer damage be in 9.2 relative to right now? Still important, but a bit less so compared to now, they hypothesize. What do you think about that, like the relative value of healer damage next patch compared to this patch?
Probably more so, if anything, right? I mean, I think when you have that cooldown reduction on hand, it further presses a lot of importance on specs that have their covenant abilities doing a lot of damage for them, whether it's getting a haste buff, whether it's getting a cooldown reduction buff for your group, right? There's different synergies with pretty much all the high-end damage dealers that are going to be able to help buff your output that way. So I would say more so. And I think that's really going to be just the primary metric of like whether or not you bring this healer or that healer, because tanks are a lot stronger. They're less dependent on somebody babysitting them these days. And it's just going to be like momentum pulls with encrypted, because you're always going into the next pack with some kind of buff on hand, whether it's resetting your cooldowns to have them ready for the next setup, whether it's you have your cooldowns up and you're grabbing a nice haste buff to go with it. There's just going to be nonstop pulls, I think.
All right, our next question goes a little bit back towards Raid from PvP. Is there a way to design fights that would benefit throughput healers, but not Sun King? It seems like even when more healing would be a good answer, top guilds always find a way to survive with Disc Holy Paladin rather than to try something else. Or are class changes the way to mix it up? Which I kind of think that, yeah, just the class changes right now are already enough to maybe have this be the case for next tier, but of course it remains a very open question.
And do you have something there, Tittles?
I was about to say, I feel like it's like a lot of it's like Race World First guilds just value the kit from Disc Holy Paladin so much, especially for like Race World First progression, and that's just a big trickle down effect. But that may just be confirmation bias because that's what's happening, right?
Maybe. They've tried it in the past, basically with fights like, I don't know, Hive Mind, as some that would, instead of just giving you a burst of damage onto the raid, it'd be like, here's an amplification, here's an acceleration of the ticking damage that would happen and everything like that. But I mean, you give equal output to all the healers, or at least pretty decently close together, and then you give them damage reduction, and then some of them just passively are dealing damage as they heal. So like, honestly, it does lie in the class changes, because they put together really niche fights like Sun King, and it's like, okay, cool, once an expansion, that's nice, but you don't want to like wait to bring certain healers. I think Blizzard likes to really focus and drill down on very specific pieces of here's the thing that we're going to balance around. And, you know, people are like, okay, well, it's going to be HPS, and let's make sure everybody has equal HPS. So yeah, technically it won't matter for a lot of other guilds out there. You're more worried about just getting Jimmy to show up to raid on time. You're more worried about people to like take the extra time to like look up when to use cooldowns and how to use cooldowns on a fight in advance. But those things always are going to have an impact in like the Race to World First. And I don't know, it's just weird seeing like the Race to World First be this huge hype moment for WoW. But I think for a lot of fans, you're like, well, they always bring these same classes the entire time. And it's like,
Do you think that the nerfs and buffs to healer specs on the current PTR are enough to challenge that, or do you suspect we're still going to see pink and white on the HPS meters?
A lot of pink and white.
Okay.
I think the upside for white in particular is that like bringing a holy priest won't be bad. So like guilds are going to go for their assumption for what's going to be great for Anduin, what's going to be great for after Anduin, right? Which can be right, can be wrong. We've heard World First guilds, for example, say, oh man, I wish we had Resto Druid on Jaina, you know, but like we just didn't have it geared up. Our mistake. Wish we had, what was it, like Prot Paladin was supposedly really good on Jaina, I think, but a lot of guilds didn't run it. So there will probably be some situations where, hindsight 2020, they may have wanted to bring one of those new healers like we're talking about. They're kind of getting into the foray, but maybe they just offer like the safety and stuff. I kind of anticipate Mistweaver seeing a lot more play even after the nerfs that it has received, but certainly still one or probably two discs, and then 1-2 pallies. But with some of the fights, I don't think you'd really want to run 3 melee healers unless you're able to have the entire raid stack. But something along the lines of Halandris, I guess they're changing the fight now, but still, if you're having everybody running all over the place, having 3 healers is going to be like a nightmare. Same thing with like Skolas. It was very awkward.
I think that's
I will say, I do think that Shaman's underrated. I think that people like really shit on Shaman a lot in raids for some reason for the next raid. I don't know why, but yeah.
For next raid, really?
Yeah. I like Shaman. Like I have Shaman, Priest, Paladin all kind of in that 1 to 2 range. Yeah.
100%. Because like Shaman doesn't really... Shaman actually has very, very good output, I think, especially with their 4 set. So I would not be shocked as well if like maybe you just say screw the new healers and just bring 2 Shamans to the fight and they'll be your output,
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
All right, our final 2 questions, very important ones. First one, #Heightgate 2022 needs to be addressed. And our second one comes from GG Wow, who says, Jak, where do you get your clothes? Since you usually have a good fit, but you're 3 full at Revo Lol Warriors tall.
You know, I like to shop at Into the AM. Not sponsored, but they got really cool shirts and stuff. This is a sailboat going through space and water and stuff, you know.
Wow.
Very cool. Very cool.
Very
Cool. Take
Yeah.
on dates. Everybody love it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, of course, you know, the WoW Esports drip. Always got to have that. Get your WoW Esports hoodies on Blizz Gear Shop.
Yep. Always nice to just get all your apparel from different events over the course of the years.
Yeah.
You know, Race of
Free
First
apparel.
MDI stuff, all that. Just
Golden Guardians.
Golden
merch.
Guardians shirt, Golden Guardians jersey for when you're really low
Free-
on laundry.
Free keyboard from Eternal Palace.
Woo.
Oh,
Yeah.
you stole that from the Red Bull Gaming
I didn't
sphere?
steal it. They
Oh
gave it
my
away.
goodness.
They gave it
Outed.
away.
They gave it away unknowingly and unwillingly.
You can ask Pieces and Limit, okay? I bet
They're
some of
still
them
trying to-
have it.
They're still doing inventory. They're like, where did this keyboard go?
Yeah.
I'm out
Anyways,
of the country. They can't extradite me.
yeah. Anyways, that'll be the end of our very important content here. I hope you all enjoyed the episode. Jack, thanks so much for coming onto our show and sharing your wisdom about healers. Where can people find you, and what sort of content would they find where they did?
All the priest propaganda, holy or disc, you know, you can find at AutomaticJak. Oh, yeah, we did it right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to the wrong side. On Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, all that stuff. Tettle's house.
What sort of content do you
All there.
post on your Instagram?
You know, me being on vacation, you know, me in the hot tub, me with more
Thirst traps.
more shirts of, you know, dinosaurs and UFOs and stuff. It's great stuff. Great content.
Very
Big,
cool.
big thirst traps. Automatic Jack, well known for that.
Tettles, calm down. Okay, you need a cold shower, buddy.
Dude.
Yeah.
All right, well, that'll be the end of our show this week. We'll be back next week with another one. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thirst traps.
What kind of
He's just
content
showing
do you
his
post
gym
on
progress,
Instagram?
man.
What kind of content do you post on Instagram? Yeah, of course it's thirst traps. Hello?
I put one hot tub picture in there.